Bobby's Going Home was released by Bit Corporation for the Atari 2600 in 1983. You play as Bobby, a kid who, you guessed it, is going home. But this trip home is a little unusual, as there are more deadly hazards than any walk home I've ever experienced. You've got deadly birds like hawks, ducks, and butterflies. What the fuck? How does a butterfly kill you? Some will fly overhead, and some waddle around on the ground. The biggest pain in the ass is how these overhead birds will fly low to the ground, and their patterns are sporadic. Are you sure these are hawks? They seem more like moths with these unpredictable flight patterns. On top of that, there's no way to attack them. Plus, you can't crouch, so the only thing you can do is retreat, which really sucks because you're slow as shit. You jump really slowly too, but thankfully you get some moonwalk level height from your jumps, and you can position yourself in midair. You're not stuck with a specific trajectory like you are in a lot of games with broken jumping controls. However, it's still far from perfect, mostly due to the slow speed. If you've got a bird flying and you're trying to land between it and one of the little bastards on the ground, you might have to do some finagling to position yourself accordingly. It feels very unnatural. Jumping over pits in general is fine, but there are some that open up and close. Doesn't this look familiar? Oh yeah, Pitfall. However, unlike that well-executed classic, this game's shape-shifting pits have a much thinner margin for error. The only way to get across is pretty much by walking across as it's opening, and then leaping at the seemingly last possible pixel just as it starts to close up to be able to land on the other side. There's also a timer that ticks down. As you cross over to the next screen, more time is added, so you're encouraged to finish as fast as possible, which is really conflicted with the fact that you have to be patient sometimes with these fucking birds and pull off these gymnastics while waiting for an opportunity to move ahead. I will say that the graphics are pretty good. There's plenty of color, the backgrounds are nice, and there's fine little additives like the planes and the sky. Although at first I thought it was an enemy that was gonna swoop down and attack me. The fact that background sprites being pretty uncommon in an Atari 2600 game really threw me for a loop. Also, the music deserves a nod for having a pretty well done tune that actually changes tempo from screen to screen, although I don't think it represents anything in particular. There's also a wide variety of screens. You've got 7 screens to track through before making it to your house, and that completes one level. And there are 32 levels altogether, totaling 224 screens. The game definitely tries to resemble Pitfall with the screen scrolling, pit jumping, and avoidance of enemies, but there needed to be more. I know there are a lot of levels, but they start to run together very quickly. And besides all the flaws I previously mentioned, there should have been more meat added to the actual gameplay, like maybe items to collect to rack up points, time, or extra lives, or more desirably, a gun of some kind to shoot down these damn birds. I know Pitfall didn't have any weapons, but it didn't need any. The exploration was plenty. You didn't find yourself in frustrating situations such as this trying to squeeze your way between this shit. Obviously, I had no expectation of this coming anywhere close to Pitfall, and I hate to make this sound like a comparison video, but I would hope that if you're gonna heavily borrow from a formula, that you'd borrow some of the qualities that made your source of inspiration work in the first place. Bobby's Going Home, of course, is no Pitfall. It's not even a second or third rate Pitfall. It's more like a third rate Smurf on Atari 2600, which had far less screens, but there was more variety to the screens in that game. But that's a good example right there in how quality is better than quantity. Bobby's Going Home is not an unplayable game. In fact, even with all of its flaws, it still does retain a little bit of an addictive quality. You want to go back and outperform yourself from the last go-around. But at the end of the day, you'll find yourself getting tired of it fairly quickly because of all its flaws, no matter how much you might want to advance further the next time around. Which is a shame because this game did have some potential.